Matt, we're back. We're going to talk about some Big 12 conference play, something we've never done before because this is the first Big 12 conference game
Wow.
since 2010. And my first season covering Colorado was their last season in the Big 12. So I've covered the Big 12 before, but it's been a very long time. I was actually I wrote this earlier today when Travis Hunter was named the Defensive Player of the Week. He is the first Buff to be named a Big 12 Player of the Week since.
Oh God.
So it was 2010, obviously,
Oh,
but can
Big
you
12 player of the week. Trick question.
Big
Yeah,
12 Player of the Week?
that's gonna be hard. That's gonna be hard. You're gonna have to tell me.
It was Speedy Rodney Stewart.
Defensive player of the week?
No,
Yeah.
just Player of the Week
Player of the week. Okay.
to
Okay.
earn a Player of the Week honor.
I thought you said
No,
defensive player of the week. Okay.
no,
Okay. Okay.
sorry, I just meant a Player
No.
of the Week honor in the Big 12.
Yeah. Because I was like
So
2010 defense. I don't know. That's
it's a
just
dumb
way
trivia
back
thing
there
because they
now.
spent 13 years out of the conference. But
Right. No, well,
yeah,
I get it. I get it. I know what you asked me. I
but
liked
it's
it.
kind of funny, like all these Big 12 things, first time since.
I
But
love
anyway,
that. I love that little piece of trivia.
let me just start here because we talked about CSU in our last video. We're not going to do that here, but we've talked for more than a year about CU going back to the Big 12 and all that stuff. I got to tell you, now that we're here, it's Big 12 conference week. I'm excited about it. I'm really excited about Colorado back in the Big 12 and getting things going this week. How about you?
You know how I feel about being in this conference compared to being in the Pac-12, Brian. You know, I miss the caviar and the wine tastings of Napa Valley, and
Well,
now
you're a little bit uppity compared to the rest of us, but
okay, yeah, I'm excited. I am
yeah.
sure it's a new era to a degree.
Mhm.
Ask me after I see a conference game in a road stadium, and then we can talk about it. I don't like Baylor. I've never been a Baylor guy ever.
Yeah.
Just there's some schools that just rub you the wrong way. Baylor's been one of them for me. But I am. I think the cool part about the Big 12 is that your average quality of opponent, at least for this year, is significantly raised. You
Yeah.
know that every single weekend you're going
Mhm.
to get a game. And the other thing that's really starting to like hit home, especially now that I've gotten, older, because Brian, I mean, the last time they were in the Big 12, I was graduating high school. So now that I've gotten older, is that the worse the place to live, the better and more passionate the fan base typically, okay? And that played out in Lincoln, Nebraska, assuredly. But the point is that I'm excited to see the passion from the fan bases. I'm excited to see people that bleed with their football programs. In the Pac-12, that doesn't really happen. Even though
Yeah.
it's not a shot across, the bow of them, because there are some amazing fan bases in the Pac-12, but it's not like, hey, it's LA who's going to show up for USC and UCLA in a down year. That doesn't exist in the Big 12. So
Right.
to that degree, I am really looking forward to seeing what it looks like. And certainly, we don't really have any prior experience with a lot of these programs, based, other than 10 years ago. And to try and look back to, 10 years, 15 years, to try and look back then to really pull is just, stupid. So
Well,
now
yeah.
we get to experience and learn some new traditions, again. And I think it'll be fun. I do. We don't know anything about a lot of these teams other than, what people tell us, because we weren't
Right.
spending the last few years diving and combing through Big 12 football. I could talk to you about Washington State and Oregon State and, all those
Yeah.
programs this year, but it'll be a transition.
And it's interesting too because this year, I'm excited about the environments in the Big 12, but the Buffs don't really get a lot of those because their schedule's so interesting because you go to
That's true.
UCF, which is not a traditional Big 12 team, although I've heard that that's a really cool environment for their home games. Um, you go to Arizona, which is a Pac-12
Arizona. Yeah,
team.
we know Arizona. Yeah.
We know Arizona, Texas Tech. You get that, and then you go to Kansas, but it's at Arrowhead. It's not in Lawrence, and so it's not like I think some of the best environments are Utah, which is a Pac-12 team, and we've been there. Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Iowa State, teams like that. Well, K-State comes here. Oklahoma State comes here. Iowa State, they don't play this year.
Did you
So,
say Morgantown?
I didn't.
Yeah,
But
that's another one. Yeah.
but yeah, they don't go there this year. So I think some of the better environments, and TCU, they went there last year. That was a cool environment. So I do think that there's some places that maybe that's a good thing. I mean, they get a lot of those good teams here, and
Oh, this year, it's
yeah.
a great thing,
So
Brian.
yeah,
This year, it's a wonderful
yeah.
thing.
So
Yeah.
you miss a
Yeah.
lot of that. And so, but I think in general, being in the Big 12 over time, I'm excited about some of those things. But for right now, we're talking about Baylor, and I'm excited to have this game back. Baylor's not like when you talk about their history, they have long histories against Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Kansas State, right? Even Iowa State. They don't have that long of a history with Baylor. They never really played each other before the Big 12 era, which was 96 to 2010, the first one. And so they don't have a lot of history with Baylor. In fact, I'm trying to find out when they've only played 16 times,
Wow.
and CU leads 9-7. Baylor actually has a 2-game Folsom Stadium winning streak, by the way, coming into this one. But there's not that long history, so I'm not sure if there's hatred towards Baylor, but they were conference rivals for 16 years or so.
Yeah, again, my feelings about Baylor are unconnected to anything CU, really. Again, I'm not a big fan of the program, but again,
Yeah,
another school with rich football tradition. Obviously, I'm kind of looking more at the team they are this year
yeah.
compared to maybe the team they've been in the past. When I think of Baylor and their program, I think of high flying offense that could score a lot of points. Typically, you got a pretty good quarterback down there
Mhm,
at Baylor, and you got a couple of receivers that can really catch the ball.
mhm.
I don't necessarily, and maybe this is just me, but I don't necessarily associate Baylor as like this dominant running team, at least not in like the last couple of decades. Would you
Yeah.
agree there?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Because I
And
mean, kind of
yeah,
starting with RG3, right?
right, yeah. And a lot of that has flipped on its head. I mean, you look at the team that they are this year, they've got one guy, and it's a tight end, a former USC tight end, by the way. Isn't that Michael Trigg who played at SC? He's huge, isn't he?
SC and then Ole
Yeah.
Miss.
Yeah, he's six
Yeah.
four, so
Mhm.
they'll have to deal with Trigg. Maybe this is a big Trevor Woods game in that regard. But
Yeah.
they're a big rushing team this year. They're going to pound you on the ground. They got two guys with over 30 carries. To see you even have 30 carries combined to running backs,
It's probably close to that.
that's what I'm saying. So
They've got
they
40, no, I think it's 64 carries as a team, but some of those are sacks and things
Right,
like that.
right.
But
I was being a little bit sarcastic,
yeah,
but
I know.
yeah, the point is that Baylor's got 121 carries on the ground, right? They've already
Yeah.
rushed for 5 rushing touchdowns. This is a team much the same as Nebraska and North Dakota State that are going to try and shrink the game, extend drives, get into third and shorts, and keep Colorado's defense on an island out on the field for a long time, especially based upon the way they just played Air Force. I
Yeah.
mean, if there's any team you want to try and throw against, it's Air Force, and they didn't. They rushed for 230 yards. They barely threw.
Yeah. The pushback I'll give you on that one is I think it's hard to know what this Baylor team is right now because opening week they play Tarleton State and they pound them, and so I'm sure a lot of those rushing attempts come in a situation like that. You beat Air Force 31-3. I'm sure a lot of it, you know, came in that.
Sure. No, you
I've
make a
heard.
good point. Yeah.
I don't know this Air Force team very well. Was talking to somebody recently that said this is just not a very good Air Force team. Maybe they just saw something there that they could do that. Um, their quarterback this year, he didn't
Oh,
play in the Air Force game. DeQuan Finn.
yeah.
I mean, he came from Toledo, threw for 7,000 yards at Toledo. So he's a good passing QB. So I don't know who's playing this week, but I think they can throw the ball. But I know they're rebuilt on the receiver in the receiver room. I do know
Yep.
that, and so they don't have those guys like you're talking about that like you always knew Baylor had stars at receiver. You don't really
Denzel
see that
Mims.
right
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, they do have a couple running backs. Dawson Pendergrass, Richard Reese that have started off playing pretty well. So yeah, they're certainly going to run the ball.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm looking right now. It looks like Sawyer Robertson, not Robertson, by the way. See you fan Robertson. Uh, he started at quarterback with Finn out. I look at what they did against Utah though, and that was a game that Finn played. Utah's up 17-0 after the first quarter,
Yeah,
and they still rushed the ball 40 times and only threw 21 times. I think I'm on the money here with this one, Brian. I mean, I watched them a little bit in that game, and I didn't have a chance to watch them last week. I think their game was at a similar time to the Rocky Mountain Showdown. I will go back and watch it. Um,
yeah,
this week before the game, certainly.
yeah,
But the one thing that you're right about is this isn't the same Air Force team as we've seen in the past. Air
yeah.
Force has been better in the past. I mean, God, I mean, one of these years they gotta go like 6-6, right? Like they
Right.
can't always be 8-4 and 9-3. So, which is impressive to see what they've done with their program. But yeah, this is a Baylor team that is going to try and pound the rock, and which is why I say it reminds me a lot of the challenge that they faced with North Dakota State and with Nebraska. Just a
Yeah.
team that wants to keep your defense on the field, and a lot of teams, Brian, the rest of the year are going to want to keep CU's offense on the sideline because of the talent that they have. Certainly, the
Yeah.
more you make Travis expend defensively, the less potential he has to hurt you offensively.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
I will say, I mean, they did run the ball 40 times. I'm looking at it right now. They
Yeah.
did run the ball 40 times against Utah, but for 108 yards.
Oh, I'm not saying
And
that they were gonna grind you. I just
right.
meant they're gonna stick with it even if it isn't working.
This is why I think it's hard to know about this Baylor team. How much do you used to get out of playing Tarleton State in a bad Air Force team,
Sure.
and Utah was killing them before Cam Rising got hurt. I mean, it was
Yeah.
23-0,
Yeah.
and Rising goes out, and then it ends up 23-12. DeQuan Finn, to your point, you said 21 passes, 9 of 21,
Hmm.
so not good.
They're gonna
Uh,
run the ball. They're a running team. Yeah. I
they're
mean,
gonna
if
they're
your
gonna try to
quarterback
run the
goes 9 of
ball,
21.
but even then, I mean, they're only averaging 4.1 yards a carry,
Yeah.
which is that's fine. But it's not like they're I don't know. I'm just gonna go back. It's hard to know what this team really is with Baylor. And defensively, they were terrible last year. And right now, I think they're leading the Big 12 in defense. But again, because you gave up a field goal to Tarleton State, a field goal to Air Force, and Utah couldn't score after Cam Rising went out. So it's hard to know how good this defense is too. So I think it's an interesting game because it's sort of like last week in that how much did we really know about CSU when their two opponents were Texas and UNC? I think it's kind of hard to know what is
Yeah.
Baylor really right now.
And because of your complete unfamiliarity with the program, because this is
Right,
the first time you're back in the conference, which is why I'm
right.
saying it's like this is all new. This
When
is
was the last
all
time
new.
any of us watched a Baylor game?
I watched a little bit of the Utah Baylor game, but like start to finish
Right.
watching a Baylor
Before
game
before this year, right?
or
When was the
cared
last time?
about how
Right.
Baylor
Hmm.
fared? Yeah, of
Hmm.
course. That's why we say this is all going to be a new experience. So this is where, as a coaching staff, you have to lean on your connections, which I wonder if compared to other staffs, because of how much recent NFL experience a lot of these guys have, if
Yeah.
maybe those connections don't exist to the degree that maybe they have in the past, because
Yeah.
you got a lot of guys that have spent a lot of time in the pro game. But I would say this is a week where you lean on a lot of those connections that you do have to
Yeah.
learn about, and not just a week, a year, to learn about these programs and what they've been through here lately, and and what their identity has been, and a lot of this is gathering information,
Hmm.
and that's why I say, for CU, it's less about, well, who are they, and more about what can they do, and
Yeah.
let's work on stopping that. Now, obviously, if you have stars like Cam Rising or everything, and CU will figure out who the guys are that kill them. This Pendergrass kid on the ground looks like, he's one of their better players. So
Yeah.
there's a couple different things I would say that you're focused on with a new conference, because preparing for those opponents, in my opinion, is different than it would be just preparing for any, Pac-12 opponent.
Right.
You got to know the history of what they've been lately, what's led them to this point, and obviously how they want to play, etc. And the other part of this is Dave Aranda down there is firmly on the hot seat,
Oh yeah.
firmly on the hot seat,
Yeah.
maybe more than any coach at any other Power Four school in the country. Honestly, that's a desperate football
Well,
team.
Billy Napier would argue with that
Well,
one.
does he still have a job by the time you put this out?
Right. That's what I mean.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I meant like, yeah, but he's right up there. Aranda's right up there with him. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Right.
the point is that was a very big win for him, 31-3 over Air Force. Very, very big
Yeah.
win for Baylor. And when you look, I'm just looking at their schedule. They've got BYU at home the next week. Boy, Baylor's got a brutal schedule. They got BYU at home the next week, and then 2 on the road with Iowa State in Ames, and then in Lubbock against Texas Tech. Then you're home for Oklahoma State. They got a tough schedule, man. They're gonna need this one. They're gonna be desperate. They're gonna be
Yeah.
looking to extend the game on the ground. I
Right.
promise that. So,
Hmm.
again, it reminds me a lot of what we saw against North Dakota State, what we saw against Nebraska. Get these guys off the field, and this is where the running game matters a lot.
Right.
Okay. this is where the work that you put in against Colorado State really matters to me. And the reason I bring that up is that, well, okay, now we've established a running game. So Colorado should be looking to do a lot of the same in extending drives and trying to shrink the game as well,
Yeah,
especially when you're outmatched. And you do that by running the ball and keeping yourself into third and short. And even that quick game we saw against CSU, that's an extension of the run game for this
yeah,
offense, especially. So you've got to, I expect to see a lot of that quick game, a lot of that, again, model what you want your offensive identity to be this year off of that 17 play drive you had against North Dakota State.
yeah,
That was the best this team has looked all year, was in that moment. And if memory serves, I think there were a couple of penalties, but I don't think there were any bailout calls. Like the last touchdown to Travis, they should have never had that. They just
yeah.
got bailed out on a personal foul right before. And I think maybe even the one before that on the drive. So the point is it's going to be earned. And I liked a lot of what we saw against CSU with the quick game. And once you start bringing everybody up because they expect you to run the football and hit the quick game, that's when you start to open up play action. The one thing that this offense should be really good at is play action.
Yeah.
And there's none of that in the offense because they can't establish a ground game to get the defense sucked up. So I would hope that we continue to see them build upon what we saw against CSU.
Well, and they might be able to do some of that because they actually showed some run game last week, and so
Sure.
maybe you can do those things. And yeah, I agree with you. And you look at the schedule. I think Colorado's a 1.5 or 2 point favorite as we're doing this, which
That's a good
seems
point.
about right. Because people don't really know what Colorado really is. They don't really know what Baylor really is. But um, I was just looking up the preseason Big 12
Yeah.
rankings. Colorado was projected 11th. Baylor's projected 12th. And to me, this is one of those games, Matt. When I looked at the schedule in the start of the year, I didn't see a single game that I thought, "Yep, that's a gimme win." But
Mm-hmm.
I also didn't see any games that I thought were, "Oh yeah, you're definitely going to lose that game." But there were several games I looked at and said, "If you're going to get in a bowl game, you better win this game." Right? And to me, it was North Dakota State, Colorado State, Baylor, and Cincinnati because you get both those two at home. Those are 4 games I think Colorado has to win if they're going to a bowl game. So I think you cannot lose to a team at home that was projected one of the bottom 5 teams in this conference.
Mm-hmm. I'm just looking at line movement and where it opened compared to where it is. You said it's Colorado's what? Where'd you see that?
I saw today 1.5.
Okay, yeah, I saw a couple books got them 2.5, and not a lot of line movement so far. So I would say Vegas is like, no, it's gonna be a tight ball game. You're gonna have
That's
a tight
generally
ball
that's
game down
generally
to
a
the
push,
wire.
right? I mean,
Well, home team gets 3 points, right? So what they're
right.
telling you is they're actually favoring Baylor here by just a little bit because
Yeah.
Colorado's not a 3 point favorite.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering to see if there's any line movement because that can typically tell you, hey, it opened this, but here's where it at. I'm looking right now at all the major sports books. You said 1.5?
I'm seeing one and
You
a
had
half
it
and
as?
two. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Well, it hasn't moved anywhere. I'm seeing anywhere between opening at 1.5 is the lowest price, and 2.5 is your highest price. So
Yeah.
people got Baylor. Vegas has Baylor favored to a degree. You get 3 points for the home field. So look, we'll see, Brian. I feel pretty good about where Colorado's at in this
Yeah.
one, but this is only because of coming off of the win against Colorado State, which is kind of why I said in our other video, how much do I
Well,
take away from it? And you can't
yeah.
control your opponent. I get it. You can't control, how you play and who you play, excuse me, and who's next. So this is another great opportunity to build on that, like I said. And again, this sets up as a winnable game. If you want
Right.
to make a bowl, you got to have this one. I echo that statement 100%. I would agree with Cincinnati, but let's just start here.
Right.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
with the Baylor game, big one, especially. I mean, look, Finn plays or Robertson plays. I
Right.
mean, none of these guys, neither one of them are world beaters. You just can't beat yourself. And
Right.
that I think is Coach Prime's just biggest task right now is CU isn't going to have a big margin for error in conference play. You just can't be beating yourself. Discipline, discipline, discipline. And I watched some of
Mhm.
those, well-off media videos where he was preaching that in the locker room and preaching that on the sideline. Do not
Right.
beat yourself. The last thing
Right.
you want to do is let CSU back into the game. Well, for Baylor, I mean, for Nebraska against Nebraska, I know there was a lot of talk. Well, look at how good Nebraska's D line played, and they did. They dominated the game. I didn't think they really played all that great outside of them. I didn't think it was some world beating performance from Nebraska. They ran the ball well, but it was only like 130 yards. It wasn't
Yeah,
like they killed Colorado. Colorado
right.
shut them out, in the second half.
Nebraska
So,
had more yards in Boulder last year than they did in that game in Lincoln.
and that's kind of my point is like, I don't want to get too high or too low off of one game, which is why I say, what do we take moving forward? I think the next few weeks prior to your first bye week, after the UCF game, the Central Florida game, after we go to Orlando,
Yeah,
we'll learn a lot in the next 2 weeks because you
right.
got two heavy rushing attacks, and that is the area of your defense. Need Chidoze and Nwankwo back. Hopefully he's back. Need Torian Carter back. Hopefully he's back.
Hmm.
But I think that you're going to learn a lot about who you are, and you're also going to have an opportunity to establish your identity. And you don't want to take anything for granted, Brian, because think about what happened the last game before their bye week last year. It changed their
Yeah,
season.
right,
It changed their season. I mean,
right.
if you go into the bye week, what it would have been? 5-2
Yep.
versus 4-3. If you don't blow the second half lead to Stanford, it would
Yeah,
have changed a lot. A
right.
lot. I don't know how many more wins, but I doubt that they just spiral like that afterwards.
They get at
And it
least
was
one.
at least one. And I thought it was just how poorly they handled the bye week. That's
Yeah,
got to be handled way better this year. So that's a full self scout, full self evaluation, fine tooth comb. You cannot roll out the bye week the same thing you rolled into it, which is why they got
right,
killed at UCLA and why Sean Lewis essentially left the program because he didn't do a damn thing over the bye week.
right.
Or if he did, they didn't implement it.
Well, and good point, but that's 2 weeks down the road. You got to get this one first.
I
And
know,
I know you're thinking ahead.
which is why I
Um,
say, hey, don't take them for granted.
but this
Don't
is
take them for
why
granted.
this one's so important. As I look at the schedule, is at UCF. I mean, the three games after this one at UCF, home against Kansas State, who arguably is the best team in the conference. I don't know. And then at Arizona, who is, we think, one
They're
of the better.
basically like a mirror image of Colorado, in my opinion. They
In
got a
some, yeah,
great
but
quarterback and a great receiver, and
but
everything else is
they've
like,
been a top 25 team. I mean, the bottom line is after this one, you've got who we think are three of the better teams in the conference in a row.
sure.
They've got to get this one. I think this is a must win. Go get it. I don't even care how it looks. I don't think Colorado is going to blow teams out. Even Baylor, even Cincinnati. I think they're better than those teams, but I don't think they're going to use CSU's term, murder than anybody. I think they're going to have to really kind of battle and fight for all these wins. But I think they're better than Baylor. And let's go predictions here. I think Colorado wins this game. I think last week was very important for them to respond to adversity and to come back and have a big game. I think they take some momentum here. They haven't been home in a couple weeks. I think that's a big deal. And Folsom on a Saturday night is off and rocking. I'm going to go Buffs 34, Baylor 24.
Boy, that's the same prediction you gave for North Dakota State, huh?
Is it?
Yeah, I think you said 34-24. No, I just was
Okay.
like, oh, I was thinking because it's like the same. They're like the same team in a lot of
Yeah.
ways in my mind.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, 30. I'm hoping 30. I'm hoping 30. I've got I know when we spoke like in the preseason, we talked about this team's going to average 30 points a game. I'm
Yeah.
not so sure. I'll say I think it's going to be a little lower scoring conference play. Give me Buffs 27-24.
Okay.
Close game. Close
All
game.
right.
Vegas.
Yeah.
Vegas typically ain't off that much, especially not with teams that get this much exposure. It is the third consecutive week on network television. Baylor will be dialed in. They'll be desperate. Again, I don't think
Mhm.
Baylor's going to put up a bunch of points unless CSU got to get the Rams off the mind. Unless CU just kind of loses control in the run game and Baylor just runs all over you. I think
Yeah.
it'll be lower scoring, more controlled, shorter game. Give me CU 24, Baylor, or CU 27, Baylor 24. I like that. I like that.
Okay. All right.
And
So
that's a cover. So
we're
take it.
both basically saying close game. I got a 10-point game, but I think it's going to be one of those things you better play well in the fourth quarter to finish that thing off. And so yeah, they're gonna have to battle all four quarters. But I think the Buffs get this one and go 3-1. And Matt, we'll talk next week because we got a trip to Orlando next week. But anything else you want to say before we wrap up this preview?
Yeah. If you're ever in a situation in conference play where you can just kneel it out and not give the football back to the opponent with the lead, do it.
There you go.
I think
Well
it's pretty. I
said.
just like now we can be done with that. We can be done with that.
Yeah.
Let's make some smart decisions here down the stretch and guide that jet into the aircraft carrier.
Do we
Very
want to start a
calmly.
new segment, Matt's weekly advice to Coach Prime?
No, God,
No?
no,
All right.
no. That's not
Okay.
to Coach Prime. It's just something I'm saying for
That's
the
just a
love.
general statement. Okay. All right.
No, no.
I wanted to clarify, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Hey,
I
we'll see you later
appreciate
this
it.
week.
All right, sounds good, buddy.
All right. Bye.